So as we saw earlier on, we're saying that we're talking about user management. So one of the things about user management is also creation. So how do we create user account? There are two ways of creating user account, but we're going to limit ourselves to this particular command. So one of them is add user and another one is user add. So we're going to be using the add user one. So we say the syntax is, or the command will be saying add user and then the name of the user, and automatically it would create a user account. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So I'll go back to my system and I'll try to create an account. But as I mentioned earlier on, for our users, we have different users. So this particular user we logged in is a regular user. So that's shown here. So this is a regular user called OS Boxes. So in order for us to create a user, we would have to do add user and then the name of the user. So let's call it say new underscore user, or let's say John. I think that would be a better name. So John. But the challenge is that there are certain things that can only be done by the root user. So if you look here, permission has been denied. The reason is that OS Boxes doesn't have that privilege to be able to create a user, and that can only be done by the root user. As I mentioned earlier on, a regular user can assume the role of a root user temporarily by using the keyword sudo. So normally we'll have to do sudo and then add user and then John, but this is what I'm going to do. Since that command has already been written in the previous one, so instead of me saying sudo add user John, I'll just say sudo bank, so which means that sudo and then the previous command. So now it's asking me what will be the password for. So you see, if you look down here, it's saying sudo add user John. It's just because earlier on I said add user John, and then because I didn't have privilege, I wanted to write the same command again. So I just said, okay, sudo and then bang. Instead of me going back to write add user, I just had to do that because it's already the last thing in memory. So the bang is just going to take the last thing in the history and then write it down there. That's what that line is doing. I'm going to create a password, and maybe I'll create a password with the same name as John. So yeah, it's going to create a saying try again. 1 second. Yes, so it's not allowing me to use the same name as the password. Oh, sorry, this is the sudo password, forgive me. So, well, yeah, if I'm assuming the role, then it means I have to use the sudo password to get into it. Oh, it's saying I did 3 attempts. Let's try one more time. Okay. Boxes.org. All right. So that user account has been created. So how would I know that that user account has been created? If I do cat/etc/password, see, it's saying down there that there's a new user that has been added. So it's called John. And then it has a user ID of 1001. The reason is that for the root user, the user ID is always going to be 0. So nobody can also be claimed to be a root user. So there's only one, the user ID for that particular group, 0. But every other one will start from 100. Every regular user will start from 100. So the first one will be 1000 because the first one is 0. The second one will be 1001, 1002 in that order. Again, if you look at the home directory, it's home/John, and then you see the kind of shell it's running. It's using the bash shell, and also the password is saying if there's a password. But for now, we know that there may not be a password. So this is how you create a user. So I'll clear my screen again, and then I would want to assume the role of that user.